The night sky above the alien world was heavy with two moons, casting a pale silver glow over the land. The human traveler walked alone across the strange surface. His boots crunched against red dust, and every step echoed in the silence. Air smelled dry, sharp like metal, and the silence was almost too perfect. He felt as if the world itself was watching him. Far in the distance stood a mountain, dark and jagged like the teeth of a giant beast. At its base, carved into the rock, was a massive doorway. Strange blue lights pulsed around its edges, glowing like the heartbeat of something ancient. The human did not know the meaning of these lights. All he knew was that this place called to him. It was not curiosity alone. It felt like fate pulling him forward. The closer he came, the more uneasy he felt. Symbols covered the stone walls, glowing faintly in the moonlight. They were not human symbols. They twisted and turned like rivers, curling into shapes his mind could not understand. Every line seemed alive, as if the wall itself was breathing. The human stretched out a hand and touched one of the carvings. For a moment, the stone felt warm, like skin. He quickly pulled his hand back. Inside the doorway was darkness. Darkness so deep that even the silver moons could not pierce it. Still, he stepped forward. His heart pounded in his chest, but he did not stop. Humans were always known for walking where others feared to go, and tonight he proved it again. The ground beneath his boots changed from dust to smooth stone, and the sound of his steps echoed back like whispers. He lit a small torch from his pack. The flame flickered, weak against the heavy air, but enough to show him the first chamber. It was vast, far larger than he expected. The ceiling stretched high above, lost in shadows. Pillars carved in the shape of alien figures lined the hall, each one staring down at him with empty eyes. Some were tall and regal, others monstrous and cruel. Their faces were alien yet human-like, familiar yet terrifying. The human whispered to himself, "What is this place?" His voice was small, almost afraid to disturb the silence. He walked deeper. The walls shimmered with strange crystal veins. Glowing faintly, torchlight reflected off them, filling the chamber with a ghostly glow. Strange runes danced across the surface, shifting as though alive. He could swear they moved when he wasn't looking. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, yet his feet refused to turn back. At the far end of the chamber stood another doorway. This one was different. It was narrow, arched like the throat of some great beast. Its frame was black stone, smooth and polished, with no carvings, only silence, only emptiness. It looked less like a door and more like a warning. Something inside him told him not to cross it. His mind screamed to stop, but his heart whispered to go. He placed his hand against the black stone. It was cold, so cold it burned his skin. Then the silence shattered. A deep, rolling sound filled the chamber, as if the walls themselves were alive. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. The runes on the walls flared brighter, flooding the hall with blue fire. The pillars groaned like giants waking from their sleep. And in that moment, the human knew. He had crossed into a place forbidden. Air thickened, pressing against his chest, making it hard to breathe. Shadows gathered in the corners of the chamber, twisting and forming into shapes. He thought he saw figures moving tall and graceful, watching him with glowing eyes. The torch in his hand flickered violently, almost dying. He tightened his grip, refusing to let the dark win. Then came the voice. It did not come from the shadows or from the walls, but from everywhere at once. It was strong, commanding, filled with anger and power. The voice spoke in a language not his own, yet he understood it as if it were burned into his mind. Insolent human, you dare step into the sacred orifice, the place no outsider has ever entered. You have defiled what is ours. The words shook him to his core. His knees trembled, but he did not fall. He looked around, but there was no figure, only the voice. Echoing across the chamber, his heart raced, but in his chest, something stirred. Fear, yes, but also defiance. He lifted the torch higher. "I meant no harm," he said aloud. His words sounded small compared to the thunder of the voice. I only sought shelter and answers. The air hissed as if the chamber itself was laughing at his boldness. From the black doorway, a shape began to emerge. At first, it was only light, sharp, and blinding. Then it became form-tall, cloaked in robes that shimmered like liquid metal. A woman, or something close to it. Her skin glowed faintly, her eyes burning like twin suns. She stepped forward, every movement filled with authority. The walls seemed to bow in her presence. The human froze, unable to speak. The figure's gaze pierced him like a blade. Her voice thundered again, louder, angrier. You have walked where no one dares. You have broken the oldest law. You are unworthy of breath. The human's torch wavered, but his hand stayed firm. He met her gaze, silent but unbroken. In that silence, something unspoken passed between them. Fear, defiance, and a spark of destiny. The chamber waited, the air heavy with what was to come. He'd entered the forbidden entrance, and nothing in his life or hers would ever be the same again. The human stood frozen, the torchlight flickering weakly in his trembling hand. The chamber was no longer silent. It was alive with whispers, groans, and the heavy echo of a voice that seemed too powerful to belong to a single being. From the dark archway, the shape of the figure grew clearer. She stepped into the dim light like a storm taking form. Her presence was overwhelming. Filling the entire chamber as though she was more than flesh and bone, she was the very will of the place. Tall and commanding, her body was wrapped in flowing garments of black and silver, fabric moving as if it were woven from smoke and light. Her skin glowed faintly, pale with a strange shimmer that made her look carved from crystal. Her eyes blazed with golden fire, watching the human with a mixture of fury and disbelief. She was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a queen and a predator in one. The human's breath caught in his throat. His first instinct was to bow or drop his torch, but he forced himself to stay still. He had already crossed the forbidden line. Retreat would not save him now. The woman's voice struck the walls, shaking the air again. Insolent human, you dare step into what was never meant for you? This place is sacred. You have stained it with your unworthy presence. Words echoed like thunder, and every pillar in the chamber seemed to vibrate with her anger. Human gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He had expected danger on this alien world, but not this goddess, a mistress of power beyond anything he had imagined. Still, he spoke. His voice was quiet compared to hers, but steady. No offense, he said, forcing his words through the thick air. I came seeking only safety. I didn't know this place was sacred. Her eyes narrowed. The golden fire burned brighter, and the air around him grew heavier. It pressed on his chest, crushing him, forcing his knees to bend. He struggled to stay upright, but the weight was unbearable. She raised one hand, and the chamber obeyed her will. Blue flames erupted along the walls, filling the hall with eerie light. Shadows stretched, dancing like living creatures, surrounding the human from every side. The mistress, there was no doubt she was the mistress of this temple, moved closer, her steps echoing like a hammer striking stone. You think ignorance is an excuse? She hissed, her voice now sharp, cutting like a blade. To walk into the forbidden is to defile it. To touch the sacred walls is to insult centuries of law. You have broken the bond of my people, and for that there is only one end: punishment. Her words sent a shiver through him. Punishment. The way she spoke it, it did not mean pain alone, it meant erasure, complete destruction. But instead of breaking something inside, the human sparked. His fear did not vanish, but it burned into resolve. He lifted his head and met her gaze, even though the fire of her eyes scorched him. If I have trespassed, he said, then I will face what comes. But no, these humans do not kneel so easily. For the first time, her expression shifted. The fury remained, but there was a flicker of something else's curiosity. No one had ever stood against her voice. No one had ever answered her judgment with defiance. Aliens who crossed this boundary before had been destroyed, broken into dust, by her will. But this human stood tall, even while trembling. The mistress tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing in thought. Her long hair, silver white like liquid light, shimmered as she moved. "Strange creature," she murmured, though her voice still carried weight. "You speak as if your spirit is greater than your flesh, but spirit alone cannot save you." Raised her hand again, and the air tightened like chains around him. He gasped, struggling as invisible pressure pressed down on his shoulders and chest. The torch nearly slipped from his grasp. His knees buckled. She wanted him to kneel too, collapse before her, to prove his weakness. And yet, he resisted. Every muscle in his body screamed in pain, but he forced himself to stay upright. He would not bow. He could not. Sweat ran down his face. His vision blurred, but his eyes never left hers. That small act meeting her gaze, refusing. To collapse was enough to unsettle her. The mistress lowered her hands slowly, her expression unreadable. The crushing weight around him vanished. He gasped for breath, his chest rising and falling, but he still stood. Silence filled the hall once more. The blue flames along the walls calmed, flickering instead of roaring. The mistress looked at him, her fury no longer as absolute as before. "You are unlike the others," she said finally, her voice quieter but sharper, like steel drawn from a sheath. "Every being who has stepped here has fallen within moments. Yet you still stand. Do you not fear me, human?" The human swallowed, his throat dry. His voice cracked, but he spoke the truth. "I fear you," he admitted. "But fear does not. Command me. Fear is not stronger than my will." For the first time, the mistress blinked in surprise. Her golden eyes softened, only slightly. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint glow of her skin, the patterns etched across her robes, the lines of power flowing through her like veins of light. She studied him as if he were some rare beast, something she could not explain. The silence stretched between them, heavy with meaning. At last she turned away, her robe flowing like mist. "Very well," she said.
No.
"You have entered the sacred place, and by law you should be destroyed, but your defiance. It intrigues me." She paused, her voice deep and sharp once more. "You will not die yet. Instead, you will be tested. And if you fail, your fate will be worse than death." Her words struck like lightning, but the human did not flinch. His heart pounded, yet he nodded once. He had stepped into a world he could not understand, faced a being of impossible power, and still stood. If tests were coming, he would endure. Them, the mistress raised her hand, and the black doorway behind her glowed with blinding light. "Follow me, insolent human," she commanded. "Your trial begins now." The human tightened his grip on the torch and stepped forward. The chamber seemed to breathe as he walked, the whispers of unseen voices growing louder. He knew there was no turning back. It faced her fury and survived, but what lay beyond the black doorway was still unknown. Yet one thought stayed in his mind. She had called him insolent, defiler, trespasser. But in her eyes, for the first time, he had seen something more respect, hidden beneath her wrath. And that, he knew, would change everything. The torch flickered weakly in the human's grip as he followed the mistress through the black doorway. Each step he took echoed like a drumbeat, reminding him that he was walking deeper into something no outsider had ever survived. Behind him, the chamber faded into silence, but before him, a new world opened, a passage carved from pure stone, smooth as glass, lit by veins of blue light that pulsed like veins of a living creature. The mistress walked ahead without hesitation. Her robe floated behind her like shadows dancing in the air. She did not look back to see if he followed. She already knew he had no choice. "Your trespass cannot be ignored." Her voice carried down the hall, calm but sharp. "You have entered the sacred orifice, and now the spirits themselves demand justice. Your fate will be decided by trial." The human's jaw tightened. "Trial," he muttered under his breath. "I didn't come here for this," and yet a part of him understood. The mistress was not simply punishing him. Perhaps she wanted to prove him weak, to break him. Perhaps she wanted to show her people that no human could stand against their laws, but deep inside he felt something else. Maybe she wanted to know if he was truly as insolent as she claimed, or if he was something more. At the end of the corridor, the stone walls widened into another chamber. This one was different from the last. It was circular, its walls carved with countless faces, alien faces, sharp and elongated, each one frozen, in expressions of agony or awe. Some seemed to scream, others to weep. The human shivered as he realized what they represented, those who had failed before him. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, glowing with cold blue light. The mistress extended her hand toward it. "Stand there," she commanded. Human hesitated only for a moment before climbing onto the platform. The stone beneath his boots hummed with energy, vibrating against his skin. Suddenly the air thickened. The torch in his hand went out, swallowed by the chamber's strange light. "Your trial begins," the mistress said. Her voice echoed strangely, as if it came from many mouths at once. The first test. Fear. The platform flared with light. The human's vision blurred, and when it cleared, he was no longer in the chamber. He was in a battlefield. The ground was blackened earth, cracked and broken. Smoke filled the air, stinging his eyes, and the sound of screams tore through the silence. All around him lay bodies, human bodies. Men and women in torn uniforms, their faces pale, their eyes empty. Some were people he knew, though he couldn't remember from where. Their hands reached out toward him, lifeless but accusing. The human's chest tightened. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, this isn't real," he whispered. "Can't be." But the battlefield was alive with horror. From the smoke rose dark shapes, beasts twisted and monstrous, with glowing eyes and jaws dripping with fire. They circled him, growling, moving closer. His body screamed to run, but where? The battlefield stretched endlessly in every direction. A voice cut through the smoke. It was the mistress's voice, though colder than before, laced with cruelty. "This is your fear, human. Death, failure, helplessness. You cannot escape it. You cannot fight it. Bow before it." His fists clenched. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break free of his chest. For a moment he wanted to collapse, to give in. But then another voice echoed in his memory, not hers, not the temple's, but his own. "Fear does not command me," shouted, his voice raw. "This is not real. You can show me nightmares, but they don't own me." The beasts lunged. Flames lit up their jaws as they charged from every side. The human stood tall, raising his arms as if to block the fire. His body braced for the impact, for the pain that would follow, but nothing touched him. The fire passed through him like smoke. The beasts vanished, their growls fading into the wind. The battlefield crumbled, the bodies dissolving into dust. The ground beneath him split, breaking apart into nothingness. He fell into the void and landed back on the glowing platform. His breath came heavy, his chest heaving as if he had run for miles. Sweat soaked his face. His hands trembled, but he stood firm. The mistress watched him, her golden eyes unreadable. "You resisted," she said softly. "You faced the fear that breaks most. Few can endure what you have seen." Her voice held no praise, only fact. Yet behind her calm tone was something else, something she did not want to admit. Respect. The human wiped the sweat from his brow. "If that was fear," he said between breaths, "then you'll need more to break me." The mistress tilted her head, her silver hair shimmering in the chamber's light. For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile knot. Kind but dangerous. "Oh, there will be more," she promised. Fear was only the first. The trials ahead will strip you of every illusion, every weakness, until nothing remains. And then we will see what you truly are. The walls of the chamber glowed brighter, as if the temple itself hungered for the next trial. The faces carved into the stone seemed to shift, their empty eyes watching him with new interest. The human's legs trembled, but he steadied himself. He had walked into the forbidden place, faced the wrath of the mistress, and endured the nightmare of fear. Whatever came next, he would not break. And deep inside, though she would never say it aloud, the mistress knew. This human was not like the others. This was only the beginning. The human stood on the glowing platform, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. The trial of fear had ended, but his mind still echoed with the visions of burning battlefields and lifeless eyes. He had faced them and stood firm, yet his body trembled with exhaustion. Still, he refused to bend. The mistress watched him with her golden eyes, her expression sharp and unreadable. She stood tall at the edge of the chamber, her robe flowing like liquid shadows. For the first time since he had entered the temple, her fury seemed calmer. She no longer saw him as a helpless intruder, but neither did she see him as an equal. "You resisted fear," she said, her voice filling the chamber with its commanding echo. "But fear is only the first chain. The true test is not what you dread, but what you desire. Right. Will is the forge that shapes every soul, and your will must be broken or approved." Her hand lifted, and the chamber shifted again. The glowing platform beneath the human's feet trembled, then melted into light. The stone walls dissolved like smoke, the faces carved into them vanishing into darkness. He blinked, and when his vision cleared, he was no longer standing in the trial chamber. He was somewhere else entirely. The ground beneath him was soft, green, and alive. Grass stretched endlessly in every direction, swaying under a gentle breeze. A warm sun glowed overhead, golden and calm. The sky was clear, painted in shades of blue and white. For the first time since he had stepped into the temple, the human felt peace. He blinked in disbelief. "What is this place?" Behind him, a voice spoke softly, almost kindly. "This is what you long for." He turned, and his heart froze. Before him stood his people, humans dressed in familiar clothes, faces he thought he would never see again. Family, friends, comrades, people from his past, alive and smiling. Their eyes shone with warmth. Their voices called his name with love. One face among them made his chest ache. A woman, her eyes filled with kindness, stepped forward. Her touch was soft against his arm. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Stay, you don't need to fight anymore. You've suffered enough." His throat tightened. His heart screamed to believe it. For a moment he wanted to fall into her, embrace, to rest, to let go of all the pain. He had been walking alone for so long. Wasn't this what he wanted? To return to belong, to feel love again? The mistress's voice echoed across the golden sky, though he could not see her. "This is your will, human. The temptation of comfort. The desire of the heart. If you surrender to it, your trial ends and so does your journey." The human's knees weakened. His arms shook as the woman held him, her touch warm and real. His body longed for it. His spirit begged for it. He could stay here forever, in a world where no fear, no pain, no loneliness touched him. But deep inside, something burned. A whisper, small, fragile, but fierce. "This is not real." He pulled back slightly, his eyes narrowing. The woman's smile trembled. Her hands tightened on his arms. "Don't leave," she pleaded. "Haven't you suffered enough? Haven't you lost enough? Stay here. You've earned it." His heart ached. Every part of him wanted to believe her, but his mind sharpened with defiance. "No," he whispered. His voice cracked, but he forced it louder. "This isn't real. You're not real." The world around him shook. The grass bent violently. The sky darkened. The smiling faces blurred, their warmth fading into shadow. The woman clung to him desperately, her face twisting with sorrow. "Why reject me?" she cried. "Why reject what you want most?" The human closed his eyes. His voice shook, but it was steady with truth. "Because what I want doesn't matter if it's a lie. My will is not to surrender. My will is to stand, no matter what you show me." The world shattered, the grass turned to dust, the sky broke into shards of light, and the voices of his loved ones vanished into silence. The woman dissolved into smoke, her cry fading into the void. In an instant, the human was back on the glowing platform, alone. His chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. The mistress stood before him once more. Her golden eyes burned brighter than before, but her fury was gone. In its place was something else: acknowledgement. "You refused comfort. she said slowly. You rejected what even the strongest warriors could not resist. You stood not because of desire, but because of will. Her words echoed like a verdict. The chamber itself seemed to hum with agreement, as if the temple was alive and judging. Alongside her, the human wiped the sweat from his brow, his voice rough but steady. If you're trying to break me, you'll have to try harder. Fear couldn't, desire couldn't. What's next? For the first time, the mistress's lips curved not into a cruel sneer, but into a faint, dangerous smile. Her silver hair shimmered as she tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she had not yet solved. You speak boldly, she said. Perhaps too boldly. But your will has been proven. Few among even my kind could resist what you have just endured. You stand unbroken, and that makes you dangerous. She raised her hand, and the platform dimmed, returning to stone. Faces on the walls shifted once more, watching with silent judgment. The mistress's voice lowered, heavy with both threat and intrigue. 2 trials you have faced, fear and will. Yet the true measure of a soul lies beyond them both, the next. Test will strip you of strength itself, and only then will I know if you are worthy, or if you are nothing but an insolent defiler. The human steadied himself, exhaustion heavy in his bones, yet his eyes never left hers. He had walked through fear, had denied false desire. And still he stood. Whatever awaited him, he was ready. The mistress turned, her robe flowing like storm clouds, her voice echoing like thunder. Prepare yourself, human. The 3rd trial will show us if your spirit is unbreakable, or if you finally fall. And with that, the chamber plunged into silence once more. The chamber was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy, alive, almost waiting. The human stood on the glowing stone platform, his body aching from the last 2 trials. His chest rose and fell in slow, heavy breaths. Sweat dripped from his face, and his muscles trembled from strain, but his spirit burned stronger than ever. He had faced fear, had resisted false desire, yet he knew the mistress was not finished. Across from him, the mistress raised her hand, her golden eyes fixed upon him. Her expression was calm, unreadable. But behind that mask, there was something more. Curiosity, unease. A flicker of respect, she refused to speak aloud. You have walked through fear, she said slowly, her voice filling the chamber like a storm. You have denied temptation. But strength is not only of spirit, it is also of flesh, of bone, of endurance. Well, alone cannot carry a body that is broken. She lifted her hand higher. The walls of the chamber shifted, glowing veins of blue. Stretching outward, forming patterns like veins of a living heart, the floor beneath the human shuddered, then opened. In an instant, the platform vanished, and he fell into darkness. His body hit hard ground. Pain shot through him, forcing a cry from his throat. He pushed himself up, groaning, and looked around. He was in a pit. The walls were jagged stones, slick with some glowing liquid that pulsed like blood. The air was hot, suffocating. Chains hung from the walls, clinking softly as if waiting for prey. The ground shook, and from the shadows came a sound that made his heart pound. Growls, deep and hungry. Shapes emerged. Massive creatures, 4-legged with twisted horns and glowing eyes, crawled into the pit. Their bodies shimmered with dark energy, their teeth sharp like knives. They circled him, growling, drool dripping onto the stone. The mistress's voice echoed from above, sharp and merciless. Here is your breaking point. These beasts know no mercy. You will endure them, or you will die. The human clenched his fists. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his will and his body. His chest burned with exhaustion, but he rose to his feet anyway. His jaw tightened, and his eyes never left the circling monsters. The first beast lunged. Its jaws opened wide, and the human barely rolled aside, the teeth snapping shut inches from his arm. He scrambled to his feet and grabbed a loose stone from the ground. As the beast turned, he swung the stone with all his strength, striking it across the head. The creature staggered but did not fall. Another came from behind. The human spun, raising the stone again, but this time the beast's claw struck his chest. Pain ripped through him as he fell to the ground. His ribs burned, blood dripping from the scratch. He groaned, but forced himself up again. "Is this all?" the mistress's voice thundered. "Is this the will you boast of? You fight with weakness. You fight with nothing." The human spat blood onto the ground. His grip tightened on the stone. "Nothing is enough," he growled. The beasts attacked again, one after the other. The human fought with desperation, striking with the stone, kicking, clawing, using his bare hands when the rock broke in half. Every blow he landed left his muscles screaming. Every hit he took burned his skin and rattled his bones. Minutes felt like hours. His arms shook violently, his vision blurred. The ground beneath him grew slick with blood, his own mixed with the beast's. His chest rose and fell, each breath a battle in itself. His body wanted to collapse, but his spirit refused. Finally, with a roar, he smashed the broken stone into the skull of the last beast. The creature collapsed, its glowing eyes fading into darkness. The pit fell silent. The human staggered, his knees trembling, blood dripping down his arms and face. He dropped the stone and leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. His body was broken, battered, yet he still stood. Above him, the mistress appeared at the edge of the pit. Her golden eyes glowed down at him, her silver-white hair shimmering in the strange light. Her voice carried no triumph, no pity, only acknowledgement. "You bleed," she said softly. "You suffer, yet you still rise." The human looked up at her, his voice rough but steady. "I'm not broken, not yet." The mistress's lips curved slightly, not in mockery, but in something closer to wonder. For the first time, her voice lacked thunder. It was quiet, sharp like steel, but edged with respect. "No one has endured the beasts," she said. "Not even my own kind. They tear apart warriors, champions, kings. But you stand." The human wiped blood from his brow, forcing a weak smile. "Maybe that's what it means to be human. We stand when we shouldn't." Her gaze lingered on him longer than before. For a moment, the fire in her eyes softened. But only for a moment. "Do not mistake survival for victory," she said, her voice regaining its sharpness. "You are not finished. You may have endured fear, denied desire, and resisted the breaking of flesh. But the final trials will strip away what remains, and then we will see if you are worthy or if you finally fall." With a gesture of her hand, the pit filled with light. The human's body was lifted by unseen force, carrying him upward until he stood once more on the glowing platform. His wounds ached, his strength drained, but his spirit refused to bow. He had faced the beasts, it endured his breaking point, and though his body was torn, his will was stronger than ever. The mistress watched him closely, her expression unreadable, though her silence spoke more than her words ever could. Somewhere deep inside her pride, something stirred a recognition she could not deny. This human was no ordinary intruder. This was the beginning of something far greater. The human stood once again on the glowing platform, his body torn, his muscles screaming with pain. His chest rose and fell with each heavy breath. Blood stained his skin, dust clung to his hair, but his eyes still burned with fire. He had survived the beasts. It walked through fear, denied temptation, and endured the breaking of his body. He stood battered, but unbroken. High above him, the mistress observed in silence. Her golden eyes shone brightly, her silver hair flowing like threads of liquid light. Her voice, when it finally came, was no longer filled with thunder. It was quieter, almost thoughtful, though sharp as always. "No one has come this far," she said slowly. "Not my people, not the invaders before you. All have fallen, broken under fear, shattered by desire, destroyed by flesh. But you, human, you stand still. Why?" The human raised his head, meeting her gaze. His voice was hoarse, raw from shouting and groaning through pain, but steady. "Because standing is what we do. When we're afraid, we stand. When we're tempted, we stand. When our bodies want to fall, we stand anyway. That's what it means to be human. The mistress tilted her head, her eyes narrowing, studying him. His words were simple, yet they carried weight, a truth she could not ignore. She had seen warriors speak with pride, kings speak with arrogance, leaders speak with polished lies. But this human spoke with nothing but raw honesty, and honesty was more dangerous than any weapon. The chamber pulsed faintly, the runes carved into its walls glowing brighter, as if even the temple itself listened to his words. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken meaning. At last, the mistress stepped forward. She descended from her place of authority, her robe trailing behind her like mist. For the first time, she came close enough that the human could see her clearly, the intricate patterns etched into her robe, the faint glow beneath her skin, the sharpness of her features. She was radiant, terrifying, and regal all at once. She stopped only a few steps away from him, her golden eyes locked with his, searching, testing, almost daring him to look away. He didn't. "You defy me," she said, her voice quiet but piercing. "From the moment you entered this place, you have defied me. You defied my judgment, my power, my trials. And yet in your defiance, you have not shown arrogance. You have not begged. You have not broken. Tell me, human, do you seek to challenge me? Or do you seek to earn me?" The human frowned, confused. "I don't seek either," he said truthfully. "I didn't come here for glory. I didn't come here to defile your people's laws. I came here because I had no choice. But once I was here, I knew I couldn't kneel. Not to fear, not to lies, not to pain, and not to you." Her lips parted slightly, her expression unreadable. For a moment, the fire in her eyes softened, flickering with something unspoken. She stepped closer, so close he could feel the heat of her presence, the energy radiating from her. "You are insolent," she whispered. "You are reckless, and yet you are strong." The human stood tall, though his legs threatened to collapse beneath him. "Maybe strength isn't what you think it is," he said. "Maybe strength isn't about power, or control, or fear. Maybe strength is just refusing to fall, even when everything pushes you down." Her gaze sharpened, her golden eyes narrowing. But this time there was no anger. There was recognition. The mistress turned slightly, her silver robe sweeping across the floor. She looked up at the glowing runes on the walls, as if the temple itself was part of her. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost as if she spoke not to him but to herself. "For centuries I have ruled this place through fear. I have commanded respect through power. I have judged all who entered and found them wanting. But you speak of strength without domination. You speak of standing without chains. Perhaps I have misunderstood humans." Brows furrowed. He could not believe what he was hearing. Was the mistress doubting herself? Before he could speak, she turned back to him, her eyes blazing once more. "Do not think I am weakened, human. Do not think your words change who I am. But no, this eye no longer see you as trespasser alone. You have earned something rare. It's the respect of one who does not give it lightly." Her words struck him harder than any trial. Respect from her. He almost smiled, though his body ached too much to show it. "I don't need your respect," he said, his voice low but firm. "But I'll take it." For the first time, the mistress allowed herself the faintest smile, sharp and dangerous, but real. Bold words, dangerous words, but they are human words, and I find them intriguing. The chamber shifted again, the platform glowing brighter, the air filled with the sound of whispers, the runes pulsing like the heartbeat of the temple itself. The trials were not over, that much was clear. But the human had achieved something far greater than survival. He had forced the mistress to see him not as an intruder, not as a defiler, but as a being worthy of her acknowledgement. As she stepped back, her voice rose once more, though it carried not anger, but something new. Respect forged in fire. 3 trials you have endured. Few could dream of such a feat, but the temple demands more. The final test will not measure your fear, your will, or your strength. It will measure your spirit itself. And there, human, We will see if you truly deserve the respect you have earned or if it will be your undoing." The human straightened, his body trembling, but his spirit unshaken. He had come this far, and he would go further. He had faced the mistress's wrath, and in doing so, he had touched something she had not expected her respect, and that, he knew, was only the beginning. The chamber pulsed with light, as though the walls themselves were alive. The human stood on the glowing platform, battered but unbroken. His body bore the marks of every trial, bruises, cuts, and blood that stained his skin, but his spirit stood taller than ever. Across from him, the mistress watched in silence, her golden eyes fixed upon him with a mixture of calculation and curiosity. For the first time, the weight of her gaze did not feel like judgment alone, it carried something more: acknowledgement, respect, even the faintest spark of wonder. "You have come farther than any before you," the mistress said, her voice low, carrying the weight of centuries. "You have faced fear and endured it. You have resisted temptation and rejected lies. You have fought against pain and broken beasts with only your hands. Do you stand before me, not as a trespasser, not as a defiler, but as something unexpected?" Human breathed deeply, his chest rising and falling. "I didn't come here to prove anything," he said. His voice was rough but steady. "I came because I had no choice. Once I was here, I knew one thing: I wouldn't let you, or this temple, decide who I was. That choice is mine." The mistress tilted her head, her silver hair shimmering under the glowing runes. "Bold words," she murmured. "But words are air. The final trial will decide whether you speak truth or whether you fall like all the rest." With a gesture of her hand, the chamber shifted once more. The glowing walls dissolved into darkness, and the human felt himself pulled upward, as though lifted by unseen hands. When the blackness cleared, he stood in a place unlike any before. The air was silent, heavy, and endless. He stood in a vast void, the ground beneath him glowing faintly as though made of starlight. Around him floated fragments of stone, runes, glowing faintly across them. Above him, there was no ceiling, only a sky of swirling light and shadow, like the heart of a storm. The mistress appeared across from him, standing on a glowing stone of her own. Her robe flowed like water, her golden eyes brighter than ever. She did not shout this time, nor fill the space with thunder. Instead, she spoke with quiet intensity. "The final trial is not fear, nor will, nor flesh. It is the spirit, the mark you leave upon the world. Every being leaves one, whether of shame, glory, or nothingness. This temple judges that mark, and it will decide whether you walk free or vanish into the void." The human frowned. "How does it judge?" Her lips curved slightly. "It shows you yourself, not who you think you are, but who you truly are." Before he could answer, the ground beneath him blazed with light. The runes spread outward, and the void rippled. Images rose all around him, visions of himself. He saw himself as weak, stumbling, bleeding, breaking under the weight of the trials. He saw himself as small, insignificant, just one fragile human among billions. He saw the fear in his eyes, the pain in his steps, the doubt that had whispered in his mind during every moment of the journey. The visions circled him like vultures, voices echoing, "You are nothing, you are weak, you are unworthy." The humans, fists clenched, his heart pounded. For the first time, it wasn't beasts or fire or illusions of comfort that threatened to break him. It was himself, his own reflection, his own doubts given form. The mistress's voice carried across the void. "This is the truth of your spirit, human. This is what you cannot hide.
Yeah.
Do you still stand, or will you fall before yourself?" Human trembled, his knees weakened. For a moment, he wanted to collapse, to give in, to admit that maybe the voices were right. He was just one man, alone, powerless in the face of gods and temples and ancient laws. But then, a spark lit in his chest. He remembered the battlefield of fear, the false comfort of desire, the teeth of the beasts. He remembered the mistress's fury, her judgment, her endless power, and how he had stood, again and again, no matter what. He raised his head. His voice shook, but it carried strength. "Yes, I am weak. Yes, I am small. Yes, I bleed. I fall. I fail. But that is not all I am, because every time I fall, I rise again. That is my mark. That is what it means to be human. The visions around him hissed, their voices twisting in fury. But instead of breaking him, they shattered, dissolving into shards of light that scattered into the void. The ground beneath him glowed brighter, pulsing like the heartbeat of the universe itself. Mistress's eyes widened, just slightly. Her lips parted as though she wished to speak, but no words came. For the first time, she looked not as a judge, not as a ruler, but as someone who had seen something she could not explain. The human stepped forward. His body still aching, his blood still fresh, but his spirit blazing like fire. This temple doesn't decide my worth. You don't decide my worth? I decide it, and I've already chosen. I will not kneel. Not here. Not ever. Silence followed, deep and unbroken. Then the void itself trembled. The fragments of stone glowed brighter, the runes blazing with light. The chamber, the temple, the very air seemed to bow not to the mistress. But to him, the mistress's golden eyes shone, and at last she spoke. Her voice was quiet, steady, carrying something she had never offered before. Then the temple has spoken. You are no longer a trespasser. You are no longer a defiler. You are marked forever. She lowered her head not in defeat but in respect. The gesture sent a chill through the human spine, for he knew what it meant. The mistress, who had ruled through fear for centuries, bowed her head before him when the void dissolved and the chamber returned. The human stood not as an intruder, but as something more. The alien people who once whispered of him as a defiler would speak his name with awe. He had left his mark not through power, not through control, but through defiance, will, and the spirit that refused to break. The mistress looked at him. One final time, her expression unreadable, but her eyes filled with fire. Go now, human. You have left your mark upon me, upon this temple, upon all who will hear of you. Walk with it, carry it, and know that respect has been given to you, a gift I have never given before. The human nodded once. His body was broken, but his spirit was whole. He turned and walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing like thunder. And as the doors of the temple closed behind him, one truth remained. He had entered as a trespasser, left as a legend,